Making cakes is a super repetitive process, and so I know if you can nail down a couple of these skills, then you can make any cake that comes your way. And so when I am starting off with a cake, I always get two boards. One board bigger than my cake, and that way I don't have to worry about messing up any of my frosting when I'm finished. But the next cake board is going to be the same size as my cake layers, and I'll show you why in just a bit. The next tip that I have is if you have a cake that has a filling anything other than buttercream, then you will need to pipe a border with your stable buttercream. And if you don't have a stable buttercream recipe, then just look at a couple of my posts and I'll send it your way, because this buttercream is hands down the best. And so for this cake, I did pipe it with some buttercream because the filling was cream cheese with some fresh fruit. And then right here is where I am ready for my crumb coat. And a crumb coat is exactly what it sounds like. It is just covering your entire cake with some frosting, and then that way all of your crumbs stay intact. This is where your bottom board comes into play. I am using that as a guide with my scraper, so that way I don't cave into my cake at all. And then after that, when it's all nice and straight, I refrigerate it for about 30 to 45 minutes, and then you are ready for your final coat. The final coat layer is exactly the same process as your crumb coat layer. And so you cover your entire cake with your frosting, and then you're going to take your scraper and you're going to try to make it as even as you possibly can. But this is where my favorite trick comes into play. I personally run my scraper under hot water, wipe off all the extra water, and then look at the difference. Putting that heat against your buttercream really smooths it out. And so you can keep doing that until your heart is content. And then what I do from there is I refrigerate it for another 30 to 45 minutes until it gets nice and solid. And then I take a hot knife and I scrape off all of those edges. And then I take my offset spatula and I make sure that everything is just nice and cleaned up. So now you are ready for all of the fun piping work. You can use any piping tip that your heart desires. And if you are feeling like you need any kind of help with your piping work, what I highly recommend is practicing either like on a plate or a parchment paper. And so that way you can scrape up all of your frosting when you're done and you can put it back in your bag and you can try again. This cake was so fun. I got to just cover it with all of the fruit, and I used some buttercream to help fuse it to the cake so that nothing moved. But I hope that these tips will help anyone who is wanting to make a cake.